Okay, let's unpack this. We are about to step into a story that is, well, it's arguably the most famous noir mystery in American history.
It really is.
If you've ever walked down a city street at night and felt that, that sudden chill, or if you've ever looked at an old black and white photo and wondered what was happening just outside the frame, this is the story that probably planted that seed in your subconscious.
It's the quintessential American cold case. It has everything. It has the setting, the victim, the almost unbelievable gruesomeness of the crime, and the complete and total lack of a resolution.
We are, of course, talking about the Black Dahlia.
Exactly.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a little tragic. Most people know that name, the Black Dahlia.
Oh, absolutely.
It's on T-shirts, it's in heavy metal band names, it's referenced in movies, video games. It's become a cultural artifact.
A piece of intellectual property, almost.
Exactly. But very few people know the name Elizabeth Short. And even fewer know who she actually was before she became a headline.
And that is such a crucial distinction to make right from the start. The Black Dahlia is a myth. It's a construct, a character created by 1947 tabloid journalism and then perpetuated by decades of speculation.
And Elizabeth Short.
Elizabeth Short was a human being, a person. And our mission today, looking at this stack of source material, specifically drawing from this collection titled Static of the Dead, is to try and separate the two. We want to find the signal in all that static.
Static of the dead. That's such a haunting phrase. I was reading through the material last night, and that concept really, really stuck with me.
It fits, doesn't it?
It does. It describes these crimes that they echo
Yeah.
long after the headlines fade and the ink dries. It's like this background radiation of unresolved trauma.
And it really, really fits this case. Because if you look at 1947 Los Angeles, the setting of our story, it's a city that is producing a lot of static. It's a noisy place culturally, historically, in every sense of the word.
So let's set the scene properly. Before we get to the body, before we get to the long list of suspects, we need to understand the world where this happened. It's 1947, Los Angeles. What does that feel like? What does it smell like?
Well, it feels like the morning after a massive party, a really long, world-changing party.
World War II.
Exactly.
Okay.
The war is just over. The soldiers are coming home. There's this huge, chaotic influx of people flooding into California, chasing jobs, chasing the sun, chasing a new life.
Well, there's this energy of optimism, of a fresh start.
There is. You have that post-war boom, absolutely. Everyone talks about the baby boom and the economic rise, and that was real. But, and this is what the sources really emphasize, there is a very, very dark underbelly to all that optimism.
The bright lights and the long shadows.
That's the perfect way to put it. It's a city that's really defined by a stark duality. For every movie premiere you see with flashbulbs popping on Hollywood Boulevard,
Yeah.
there are 1,000 people living in single-room occupancy hotels, scraping by, slowly realizing that the big dream isn't going to happen for them.
It's a city of transients.
A city of transients, a city of strangers. Everyone's from somewhere else. No one has deep roots. And it's in this specific atmosphere, this potent mix of desperate hope and deep secrecy, that this crime takes place.
And the crime scene itself, it almost feels too cinematic to be real. It wasn't in some grimy back alley. It wasn't in a dark, locked room.
No, and that's a huge part of the initial shock. It was a vacant lot in a residential neighborhood called Limerick Park, beneath the bright California sun.
Just out in the open.
Out in the open. The sources describe the discovery as a moment of shocking duality. You have this young woman who came to the city specifically to be seen, to be a star.
Right.
And she's found posed as this grotesque display for the morning commuters to see.
We're going to get into the forensics of that display because they're terrifying and they tell us so much about the killer. But the mission of this deep dive, our North Star for this whole conversation, is to look past the Black Dahlia myth. We want to uncover the reality of the human being at the center of all this static. We want to find Elizabeth Short.
And that is so much harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
Because Black Dahlia is a character, a story. Elizabeth Short was a person. And the two have been completely and maybe deliberately confused for nearly 80 years.
So let's start there. Let's make that our first segment. The girl behind the name. If we can strip away all the noir movie vibes, all the sensationalism, who was she really?
Well, the sources paint a picture of someone who was, honestly, a tragedy long before she was ever a murder victim. If you look at the biographical data, you see a life that's just defined by instability from the very beginning.
Okay.
She was born July 29, 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts.
A definitive East Coast beginning.
Yeah.
A long way from LA.
A very long way.
Yeah.
But that stability, what little there was, didn't last. The Great Depression hit her family like a sledgehammer.
As it did for so many.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the sources highlight a really pivotal, traumatic moment in her childhood. Her father abandoned the family. He parked his car by a bridge, making it look like a suicide, and just disappeared. He actually contacted the family years later, but for all of Elizabeth's formative years, he was gone.
Wow. And I think it's hard for us now to really grasp what that meant back then. The Great Depression wasn't just times are tight.
No, it was catastrophic.
And for a father to just vanish, that leaves the mother, as the source notes, raising 5 daughters completely alone.
Can you imagine that burden? 5 girls, no income. In the middle of the Great Depression, Elizabeth grew up watching her mother struggle, just constantly watching that instability.
That has to shape a person.
It absolutely does. It creates this profound need for security, or maybe the opposite, a need for escape. She saw firsthand that the people who are supposed to protect you can just disappear.
And on top of all that emotional and financial trauma, she had physical struggles as well.
A lot of them. She suffered from severe asthma. And in the 1930s and 40s, the treatments weren't what they are today. You didn't just puff on an inhaler and go play soccer.
It was debilitating.
Extremely. The primary treatment was basically change the air. Find a climate that's better for your lungs.
So she couldn't just stay in Boston, even if she wanted to.
No. The cold, damp New England winters were genuinely dangerous for her. So the source details that she spent her youth just moving back and forth between Massachusetts in the summer and Miami, Florida in the winter.
She was literally chasing the weather.
She was chasing her next breath, essentially.
This is a really key point for me. She spent her youth moving. The idea of being transient, of not having a fixed home, that was baked into her from a very young age.
It establishes a pattern. She becomes comfortable, or at least accustomed to, a drifting lifestyle. She's not rooted in one place. She's always looking for the next place where she can breathe, literally and metaphorically.
And eventually that search leads her to the ultimate destination for dreamers and drifters.
California.
The Hollywood dream.
Of course. As she grew older, the source says she developed this intense fascination with Hollywood, the movies, the stars, the glamour. She dreamed of being an actress and living among those movie stars.
Which, again, makes her so relatable. I mean, who hasn't looked at the screen, especially in that era, and thought, I want that life?
Especially in the 1940s, the movies were the ultimate escape from the Depression and the war. They were the only Technicolor thing in a very black and white world. So in the mid-1940s, she finally does it. She relocates to California to make that dream real.
And here is the massive reality check that so many people faced. Hollywood is a meat grinder.
It is. It chews people up and spits them out. And the reality she found was very, very different from the dream she'd seen on screen.
How so?
The source material describes her life in Los Angeles not as glamorous, not as exciting, but as a drifting existence.
There's that word again, drifting.
It just keeps coming up.
Yeah.
It implies this lack of agency, doesn't it? A lack of control. She never found steady acting work. She wasn't on set every day. She wasn't even getting callbacks. She was just surviving, but barely.
So what was her living situation actually like? Did she have an apartment?
Not really. It was incredibly precarious. The source lists her housing situation as constantly changing, staying with friends for a week, then living in a cheap hotel for a few nights, then relying on acquaintances for support.
She was couch surfing before that was even a term.
Exactly. She was always just one favor away from being on the street, always dependent on the kindness or the motives of strangers.
And yet, despite this constant struggle, she maintained this very specific image. The sources all describe her as strikingly beautiful.
They do. Pale skin, dark hair, a very memorable look.
And the clothing, this is a key detail that comes up over and over. She was known for wearing elegant black clothing.
Always black, which was unusual at the time. It made her stand out.
Is that where the name came from, the Black Dahlia?
It's certainly part of the origin story for the name, yeah. That stark black clothing against her pale skin created a visual that people remembered. It was dramatic.
But, and this is a crucial distinction the sources make, she was never actually called the Black Dahlia to her face while she was alive.
Never.
Really? I feel like everyone just assumes that was her nickname, that her friends called her that.
Nope. That was a completely post-mortem invention. It was a branding exercise by the press, essentially.
To sell papers.
To sell papers. It was likely inspired by the 1946 film noir, The Blue Dahlia. But in life, she was just Elizabeth, or Betty to her friends.
She also had a bit of a flair for the dramatic herself, didn't she?
She did. And you can see how her life would lead to that. She needed a good story. She needed to stand out from the thousands of other pretty girls who just got off the bus at the station.
That makes her so much more human to me. She wasn't this dark, mysterious figure of the night. She was a young woman trying to puff herself up a bit, trying to seem more important or more tragic than she was, just to be seen.
Precisely. And we have to address the other side of the rumors that came later. The press, after her death, alleged all sorts of things.
Prostitution, criminal activity.
Right. They painted her as this dangerous femme fatale. But if we stick to the facts in our source material, there's absolutely no confirmed evidence that she was ever involved in prostitution.
So that whole party girl image might have just been static.
It was static.
Yeah.
Generated by a media that needed a sensational, simple narrative. In reality, she was likely just lonely, broke, and looking for a connection or a meal or a place to sleep.
Which makes what happened to her even more heartbreaking.
Infinitely more.
Let's move to that day. January 15th, 1947, the morning of the discovery.
Leimert Park. It's a chilly morning for LA. A woman named Betty Bersinger is out walking with her young daughter.
Can you just imagine? You're just out for a normal morning walk with your kid.
And she sees something in the grass of a vacant lot. And this detail is so telling, so psychologically revealing. She didn't think it was a body at first.
What did she think it was?
A break-in mannequin.
A mannequin.
Okay.
That speaks volumes about the condition of the body, doesn't it? That it didn't even look human at first glance.
It speaks to the utter dehumanization of the victim. The body was so white, so drained of blood, and posed so artificially that her brain just categorized it as an object, a discarded thing.
And then she got closer.
As she got closer, the horror, the reality, set in. It wasn't a mannequin. It was Elizabeth Short. And the state of the body is, well, it's the stuff of nightmares.
Okay, we have to unpack the forensics here because they are incredibly specific and they point directly to the type of killer we're dealing with. The body wasn't just killed, it was displayed. It was altered.
Altered is putting it very mildly. The first and most shocking thing is that the body was cut cleanly in half at the waist.
A complete hemicorporectomy.
A medical term for something truly grotesque.
And when you say cleanly, you mean this wasn't a frenzied hack job.
That's the key takeaway from the autopsy reports in the source material. This wasn't a jagged, messy tear from a crazed attack. This was precision. The cut was made between the second and third lumbar vertebrae.
Which you'd have to know where that is.
You would have to know anatomy. You have to know where the joints are to separate the spine that cleanly. This was not a guess.
But it goes even further than that. The body was completely drained of blood.
Drained, like intentionally drained.
Yes, all of it. Which explains why Betty Bersinger thought it was a mannequin. The skin was a ghastly white. And beyond that, the body had been washed by the killer, scrubbed clean.
That is just, it's chilling. It's so clinical. It removes any sense of passion or rage and replaces it with this cold, methodical process.
It implies a frightening level of control and, more importantly, time. This didn't happen in 5 minutes in a back alley.
No. This happened somewhere private, somewhere with water, with tools, somewhere the killer felt completely safe enough to spend significant time with the victim after death.
And then there's the posing. It wasn't just dumped.
Not at all. Her arms are positioned above her head. The two halves of her body were arranged a foot apart. She was laid out to be seen. It was a deliberate, horrific display.
A tableau.
Exactly. And the face.
The face is maybe the most infamous part.
The Glasgow smile, the source calls it that. Her face was slashed from the corners of the mouth up towards her ears.
Creating this permanent, grotesque grin.
It's a taunt. It is the ultimate act of defilement. It's taking the beautiful face, and remember, she was known for her beauty. That was her currency in Hollywood. And disfiguring it in a way that mocks happiness, that mocks her very identity.
It's an act of just profound hatred.
Deep, deep hatred. Whether it was towards her specifically or towards women in general, it's impossible to say. But the rage is just etched onto her face.
So, looking at the crime scene itself, that vacant lot, was there blood there? Was there any evidence of a struggle?
None. And that's the key forensic implication. No signs of struggle in the grass. No blood pooling on the ground, which means Leimert Park was just a dump site The murder, the bisection, the draining of the blood, the washing, all of that happens somewhere else entirely.
And that leads us directly to the profile of the killer. The sources are pretty specific about what this all suggests.
They are. When you combine the hemicorporectomy, the draining of the blood, the clean, precise cuts, the profile that emerges is someone with medical training.
A doctor,
Like a doctor, a surgeon, maybe a medical student, or at the very least, someone with significant experience with butchery or anatomy. A mortician's assistant, perhaps?
You don't just stumble into knowing how to bisect a human body that efficiently without damaging the internal organs in a messy way.
Absolutely not. This was a skill. A terrible, terrible skill.
So we're looking for someone comfortable with the dead, someone comfortable with a knife, and someone with a private location to do all of this work.
And someone who, after all that, had the nerve to drive the body parts across Los Angeles and display them for the world to see.
Okay, so the body is found, the police arrive, and then almost immediately a second force descends on the scene.
The media.
And the media frenzy around this case was, by all accounts, unprecedented.
You really have to understand the context of the time.
Yeah.
This is post-war America. Newspaper sales are king, and in LA you had this fierce, cutthroat war between the Hearst papers and all the others.
And this story was pure gold for them.
It was the perfect storm for sensationalism. You have a beautiful, young, aspiring actress found in this horrific state. It's a story that has everything: sex, mystery, Hollywood, and shocking violence.
And this is where the Black Dahlia is born.
Yes. The reporters swarmed the city. Newspapers nationwide ran these screaming headlines immediately, and they needed a hook, a catchy name. Elizabeth Short is just a name on a census form.
The Black Dahlia is a character.
It's a character. It sounds like a movie villain or a tragic heroine from a pulp novel. It creates distance. It turns a human tragedy into a piece of entertainment.
And the press didn't just name her, they constructed an entire narrative for her, didn't they?
They did. They immediately leaned hard into the femme fatale trope, the noir tropes that were so popular at the time.
She became the mysterious temptress.
The dangerous party girl, a Hollywood temptress. They ran stories, many of them fabricated, implying she was hanging out with gangsters, that she was a call girl, that she was prowling the Sunset Strip looking for trouble.
Which, as we've already discussed, goes against everything the actual sources say about her. There was no evidence for that.
None whatsoever. But it sold papers, and it did something else, something incredibly damaging to the case.
It impacted the actual investigation.
Massively. Think about it. If the police are being told by the newspapers, and by extension the public, that they should be looking for the killer of a prostitute or a criminal underworld figure, they're going to look in specific places.
They're talking to pimps and mobsters.
Exactly. They're talking to specific people, running down specific types of leads. But what if she wasn't any of those things? What if she was just a drifting, lonely girl who fell in with the wrong person? The suspect pool becomes totally different.
Plus, the sheer volume of noise must have been deafening.
The static. The investigation became chaotic almost immediately. The sources talk about how evidence was mishandled by reporters trampling through crime scenes. Key witnesses were overlooked because the police were chasing wild leads based on newspaper rumors rather than hard facts.
And media leaks.
Media leaks complicated everything. The police would find the genuine clue, and the very next day it would be on the front page of the Los Angeles Examiner, tipping off the killer and giving him time to cover his tracks.
Speaking of the killer, he wasn't just sitting back and watching this unfold. He was participating.
This is one of the most chilling and audacious aspects of the entire case.
Yeah.
The killer communicated.
The package.
A few days after the discovery of the body, a mysterious package arrives at the offices of the Los Angeles Examiner.
Not the police. He sent it to the newspaper.
The newspaper. That tells you everything you need to know about his motivation. He wanted the fame. He wanted an audience. He saw the headlines, and he wanted to direct the movie.
What was inside the package?
It was her. It was her identity. It contained Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, her social security card, her address book, and some photographs.
That is just incredibly brazen. It's like a trophy. It's him saying, I have her. I own this story now.
And here is the crucial forensic detail that links directly back to the washed body we talked about.
Okay.
All of the items in the package had been carefully cleaned with gasoline.
Gasoline? Why gasoline?
It's a solvent. It destroys the oils from human skin, which means it completely removes fingerprints. So again, we see this methodical, almost forensic awareness.
He's not sloppy. He's not panicked.
Not at all. He wants to taunt the police and the public, but he has motivation. He wanted the fame. He wanted an audience. He saw the headlines, and he wanted to direct the movie.
What was inside the package?
It was her. It was her identity. It contained Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, her social security card, her address book, and some photographs.
That is just incredibly brazen. It's like a trophy. It's him saying, I have her. I own this story now.
And here is the crucial forensic detail that links directly back to the washed body we talked about.
Okay.
All of the items in the package had been carefully cleaned with gasoline.
Gasoline? Why gasoline?
It's a solvent. It destroys the oils from human skin, which means it completely removes fingerprints. So again, we see this methodical, almost forensic awareness.
He's not sloppy. He's not panicked.
Not at all. He wants to taunt the police and the public, but he has absolutely no intention of getting caught.
And there was a message with it, right? A note.
There was. And it was constructed using letters cut and pasted from newspapers, just like a ransom note from a classic movie.
What did it say?
It read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings."
Dahlia. So he was reading the papers. He adopted the name that the press had given her.
Exactly. It's a terrifying feedback loop. The press creates the myth, the killer sees it, adopts it, and by using it, makes the myth feel real. He's validating their entire sensational narrative.
Did anything ever come of that address book? That seems like it would have been a huge lead.
It was a massive lead, and the police pursued it vigorously.
Right.
But you have to remember her lifestyle. She was a drifter. She knew a lot of people, but most of them very casually.
Right.
The book contained names of men she'd had dinner with once, people whose couches she'd slept on for a night or two. It sent the police in 100 different directions, but it didn't lead to a single smoking gun.
And then, on top of all this chaos, came the false confessions.
So many. The sources say over 60 of them.
60 people walked into a police station and said, I did it. I can't wrap my head around that. Why would anyone do that?
It's a strange psychological phenomenon you see in a lot of high-profile cases. Some people are mentally ill and genuinely believe they did it. Some are desperate for the notoriety and attention. Some might even be trying to protect the real killer.
But the effect on the investigation must have been crippling.
It clogged the gears of justice completely. The police were legally obligated to vet every single one of those 60 people, wasting thousands of man-hours that could have been spent chasing real leads.
Meanwhile, the real killer is out there, washing things with gasoline and reading about his work in the morning paper.
Precisely. Untouched.
Let's talk about the suspects who did matter, the ones that weren't just looking for attention. The source material highlights a few names that have stuck around for decades, becoming part of the legend themselves.
The list of potential suspects is incredibly long, but there are a few standouts. And the most prominent one, especially in recent years, is a man named Dr. George Hoodle.
A doctor?
Yeah.
That sets the profile we discuss.
It fits perfectly. He was a wealthy, well-connected Los Angeles physician. He had the medical training. He had the status. He was, by all accounts, an incredibly intelligent, but also a very dark and strange figure.
And the accusation against him comes from a very, very interesting source.
His own son.
His son.
Yes, Steve Hodel, who grew up to become an LAPD homicide detective. Years and years later, after his father's death, he began investigating and built this massive, intricate case claiming that his own father was the Black Dahlia killer.
That has to be an unimaginable burden to carry. To believe your father was this monster. What was the evidence he uncovered?
It's incredibly compelling, though it remains circumstantial. First, and most obviously, there's the medical background. It fits the hemicorporectomy and the clinical nature of the crime perfectly. Second, George Hodel was known for hosting these strange, decadent, surrealist parties at his unique home. He ran in those dark artistic circles that valued shock and transgression. There are even claims that Elizabeth Short had been seen at one of his parties.
And there was a police wiretap, wasn't there?
Yes. This is probably the most damning piece of evidence. At one point, Hodel was under suspicion for the incestuous abuse of his own daughter, Steve's sister, and the police bugged his house.
And they caught him talking about the Dahlia case.
They did. There is a transcript from the surveillance where he's heard talking to himself, and he allegedly says, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They can't prove it now."
Supposing I did. It's not a direct confession, but it is incredibly suspicious.
It's unbelievably arrogant. It's taunting. It fits the psychological profile of a man who sends a package to a newspaper perfectly.
So what happened? Why wasn't he ever charged?
By the time his son was building the case, George Hodel was long gone. He eventually left the country and lived out his years in Asia. The trail went cold, and the evidence, as strong as it seems, was never enough to bring a formal charge.
Wow. And there were others, right? Other strong suspects.
Oh, yes. Another name that pops up is Leslie Dillon.
And what was his profile?
He was a mortuary assistant.
Again, someone who knows anatomy, someone who knows how to handle bodies.
Right. Dillon's story is bizarre. He actually contacted the police himself with these incredibly detailed theories about how the murder must have been committed.
That's a red flag.
A huge one. His theory seemed a little too detailed, a little too accurate. The police thought maybe he was testing the waters or trying to insert himself into the investigation for his own reasons.
He fit the skill profile perfectly. Mortuary assistants know how to drain blood, how to handle remains.
He was a very strong suspect for a time. But ultimately, they couldn't tie him to it definitively, and he was eventually released.
And the scope of the investigation was just huge. They were looking at doctors, soldiers returning from the war with PTSD, Hollywood figures, known criminals.
They looked at everyone, but the static, as we keep calling it, was just too thick. The false leads, the media interference, the sheer number of transients in LA at the time, they could never find that one definitive link to one person.
So we arrive at the legacy of the case. Why did it stall so completely? Why, after all these years, is it still America's most famous unsolved murder?
Well, it's a perfect storm of the things we've discussed. First, there was no confirmed murder weapon ever found.
Nothing.
No knife, no saw, nothing. Second, there were no verified eyewitnesses to the actual killing. There were some dubious claims of seeing someone who looked like her being forced into a car, but nothing solid. We have witnesses to the body being found, but not to the murder itself.
And the forensic evidence?
The forensic evidence, while distinct, was compromised, both by the killer's meticulous cleanup and by the lack of technology back then, and of course, the chaos of the press at every turn.
It really feels like the perfect crime, in the absolute worst way possible.
It was a crime designed to baffle. The killer wanted the notoriety, but he engineered it so that he would never be caught.
But beyond the mystery, beyond the clues and the suspects, there is the human tragedy. And I think that's what we need to circle back to as we analyze this. Elizabeth Short was 22 years old.
Just 22.
Yeah.
She had asthma. She missed her dad. She liked to wear black dresses and tell stories to seem more interesting. She was a person, not a puzzle.
And the contrast between her dream, those bright Hollywood lights she came here for, and her end is just, it's devastating.
She wanted to be known. She craved fame, and she got it, but in the most perverse, horrific way imaginable. She became a legend, a household name, but it was based on the mystery of her death, not on her talent or her life.
The Black Dahlia persona really did just swallow her whole, didn't it?
It completely consumed her. The myth is so strong, so seductive, that it's hard to see the real girl behind it anymore. The static of the dead in this case is the roar of the legend drowning out the quiet, sad reality of a lonely girl in a very big, very dangerous city.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's reflect on that haunting imagery one last time. It's what stays with you.
It is. The smile carved into a face that dreamed of stardom. It's the ultimate, cruelest irony.
And the lingering injustice of it all. A killer, a smart, methodical, and profoundly evil person walked away into the shadows of 1947.
They lived their life. Maybe they got married, had kids. Maybe they walked past a newsstand every day and saw their handiwork on the front page.
And smiled.
And smiled.
That is a truly terrifying thought.
It is. But that is the reality of the static, the unanswered questions that just echo forever.
So here is our provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away from this. We consume true crime. We're fascinated by it. We listen to these stories. We watch the documentaries. We remember the names given by the press. The Black Dahlia, the Zodiac, the Golden State Killer. But I want you to consider your role, our role, as the audience.
How much did the creation of that Black Dahlia myth actually hinder justice for Elizabeth Short? If the public and the press hadn't been so hungry for a simple femme fatale narrative, would the police have looked for the killer of a lonely drifter instead? Would they have looked in different places?
We remember the name the press gave her, but do we remember the human being? It's a reminder to try and listen closely to the static, because somewhere in all that noise, that's where the truth hides.
And sometimes the truth is much quieter and much, much sadder than the legend.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious.
And keep listening.